Welcome to ShovelTalk, a podcast for economic developers. From your friends at the Golden Shovel Agency.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Shovel Talk. We are running a little bit lean this month. Amanda Jenkins is taking a little bit of time off, so you won't be able to hear where in the world she is until next month. And Bethany Quinn will be running this podcast solo. Before I introduce the wonderful guest that she has on the pod today, I do want to talk about some recent content Golden Shovel has pushed out that we are super proud of. Maybe you've already seen it, but we just launched an ebook called Housing Studies and Economic Development Best Practice that Leads to Growth. Super proud of it. Bethany Quinn, who you'll hear from in a bit, led the charge on this. And it's a super interesting ebook on a very important issue in the economic development world these days. So I encourage you to go to the Golden Shovel website and download that and check that out. And then we also had a nice companion piece to that. We had a webinar on the 28th of April. I don't know exactly when you're listening to this, but that was when we had it. The recording of this is on the Golden Shovel website right now for you to check out how to plan and fund housing projects in your community. So like I said, a nice companion piece to that ebook that, again, we're super proud of here at Golden Shovel, and our team is continually pushing out wonderful content for the economic development community and our clients. Okay, Alicia Wilson is our guest this month on Shovel Talk, and she is the first Vice President for Economic Development at Johns Hopkins University and Johns Hopkins Health System in the City of Baltimore. The hospital recognized the impact the organization could play on the economic development in the City of Baltimore, and they created this department from scratch. And Alicia Wilson is a historic first for that wonderful organization, and we're looking forward to hearing her discussion with Bethany, which we did record back in the month of March. So Bethany, take it away.
Well, I am so excited to be here today with Alicia Wilson. She is an economic developer at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Alicia, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bethany. It's really an honor to be able to be interviewed by you.
I was so excited. I was telling Alicia a moment ago that I don't normally get to work with economic developers in my own backyard. Those of you who know me know that I'm located in Maryland, and Alicia and I are about 20 minutes from each other. So after seeing posts about her popping up everywhere, I thought we needed to get this lady on the show to talk about the success she's having. So thank you for joining us.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So I do want to start today just by, talking a little bit about your background and letting people get to know you.
Sure.
You're an economic developer now, but you actually have a law degree from Cary and you practiced law for, I think, at least a decade, right?
Yes.
You did. So what drew you into economic development? That's an interesting career change.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's a full change. I would say it's been an evolution of the career. Certainly, I was a law firm partner at a law firm in Baltimore called Gordon Feinblatt. And in my time at Gordon Feinblatt, I really was engaged in a wide variety of legal disciplines. So I was a litigator, but then I turned into more of a negotiator, as well as sort of a business advisor over the course of my career, because I really enjoyed litigation, but I also found that all the things I learned in litigation were really useful in advising businesses and corporations and individuals on how to avoid litigation, and really be able to just use their revenue to conduct business. Mm-hmm. And that led me to working in the real estate domain and having sort of this neat blend of, tremendous contacts, being able to see a vision to bring something to life, and really also being able to be thrust into things where nothing occurred and trying to make something happen. And so when I left my law firm, I went to work for Kevin Plank and the Port Covington Development Project. Mm-hmm. And there I really honed my skills and really being able to think about complex deals involving multiple stakeholders, and how do you bring, a project to life for not only those who ultimately, occupy buildings and work there, but also for the communities that surround that real estate project. Mm-hmm. And that then led me to Johns Hopkins, where I get to work on both economic development work, but also economic inclusion. Just, we are, very much place-based. It's an anchored institution, right? Unlike most anchors you can pull up, it's a little different. So I feel like everything is built on one another. I'm still using a lot of my legal skills, negotiating, business advising, thinking about litigation, how to avoid it, how to be prepared if it does happen, but also how to bring something to life in a place where, maybe not something else existed or maybe nothing existed. And that's really a part of like what brings me joy in this work as well.
Well, and I think it's so interesting, we talk about the journey and how you're able to apply the skills in all aspects of it, because, a lot of the economic developers we work with, they go to organizations like IEDC to get training on deal skills and real estate. So coming at it from the legal perspective, you obviously are a leg up, than a lot of people, because you actually can look at those contracts and try to think about how to pull the pieces together. The Port of Covington project is an incredible example of that. And a lot of people are probably unfamiliar with it. That was a $5.5 billion project, and it involved a lot of redevelopment. So could you kind of give our listeners some background on that project and what it took to pull off a project of that scale?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, I was able to come into that project at just the right moment. And I feel like timing is everything. And I have impeccable timing every single time when I talk about joining an organization. So at the time when I joined Port Covington, all the land had been assembled. So there were so many people who had brought together 235 acres of waterfront property in an urban center. Doesn't happen. I mean, I don't know how you assemble that many acres on a waterfront. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's practically miraculous.
It was a miracle. So those folks, that's a story they could write a book every day. But when I came in, it really was to bring to life what was the vision for these 235 acres. So what's going to be the mix? Who's going to reside here? And as we thought about how to build infrastructure, it really was like vacant land where there was no infrastructure. So no water, sewage, piping, like for the type of redevelopment you would want to do on a 235 acre. And so
I'm gonna stop you right there because, and I want to keep going, but because a lot of people listening are in rural communities and they hear Baltimore and they're thinking, oh, Baltimore is not going to have the need to put an infrastructure like we do in our rural communities.
No.
Baltimore has it all together. So I just want to point out that even in urban areas, you still deal with those challenges.
Yeah, if you recall, just like in urban centers, and my dad's from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, which, we could talk about Kansas and talk about Montana, and I can tell you my dad had the same story. So I am I have a city heart, but a great, in the center of that heart is a great love for rural communities. And in this vein, when we think about Port Covington, we recognize that over years, land has been used for different purposes. And so in the city of Baltimore, there was literally 235 acres on the waterfront that had never been developed for high density use. Most people build their cities up against their waterfront. We hadn't, and especially in this area of Baltimore. And so the TIF, which was the tax increment financing, was a tool to really allow for that infrastructure to be laid, which ordinarily you would issue, general bonds that would go for over a whole city. But when you're talking about a very finite area, you would use a tax increment financing. And so as a part of that, you can imagine, because you're asking for the use of public resources, I would say that, it's not like we asked for $660 million from the city's coffers. That's not how a TIF works, but we certainly asked for the city to use its backing to be able to finance the infrastructure. It was really important to say, so what is the benefit to the community? And what's the benefit to communities adjacent? What's the benefit to the city as a whole? And so for me, I got to architect from the outset a community benefits agreement and how that process would work. And what I came up with was to do a hyper-local community benefits agreement to those who are closest to the project based on a principle. You do well towards everyone, but do well towards your closest neighbors. And then we did a citywide community benefits agreement that tacked on to the tax increment financing deal, which allows for the community to sort of look across the waterfront and say, what, my community is improving as that project is coming to fruition. And so that was a really good use of building infrastructure in our community.
That's really interesting, the community benefits agreement. So how did you, I guess, decide what should be included in that?
Really good question. So in many ways, especially for the hyper local community benefits agreement, it was driven by what does a community want? What does the adjacent community want to come to fruition? When this is all built out, what do you want to say as a community we have progressed on? Is it a grocery store? Is it retail, commercial development? Is it different housing stock that's in our locale? Is it recreation center? Are there fields? Is it retail within our community? And so really letting the community drive. And the bigger question is, who is community when you're talking about a community benefits agreement? Because that can be complicated. And then at a citywide level, again, letting the community drive, but also thinking about what's citywide in nature. Jobs are citywide in nature, right? People come from all over. So how can we make sure that jobs actually inure to the benefit of this community? Mm-hmm. Housing. So there's a certain amount of housing that people want in their neighborhoods, mm-hmm. but there may be housing units for people from all different incomes that you want on site. Right. When you talk about the businesses that are going to occupy this, you don't want to see it all be filled with national brands. You want some of the local mm-hmm. mom and pop, like the undergirding of Baltimore, the undergirding of rural communities, right. to be able to come to fruition in those sites. And so it really is about the grand array of like, what are the offerings we can do to make sure, and also who's working on this project, who's building it. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a lot of money that's expended when you're talking about building a project. So who are those contractors? Right. What are their profile? Are they women-owned businesses, mm-hmm. veteran-owned, disabled businesses, Black-owned businesses? Who are they? And then we know that those businesses employ people who are like them. We know that veteran disabled businesses employ veterans at a rate that nobody else does. Black-owned businesses, same thing. Women-owned businesses, same thing. So really being thoughtful about who are we partnering with, knowing that this project, like you said, it's a $5.5 billion project. So there's a lot that everybody can win as sure. a part of a project like that.
Sure. No, I think that's fascinating because everything you're saying comes down to such a greater level of planning.
Yeah.
And really taking the time to look at a project as something that can benefit the entire community holistically rather right. than just one segment of society. That really stood out to me when you were breaking down, for example, who's going to get the contracts and who are they right. going to employ, understanding how that all plays together. That's really insightful.
Yeah. And Bethany, you know this. Great things can happen, but if they don't happen for individuals that get to see them happen, it could be so wonderful, but they will burn it down to keep themselves warm. They will hate what is good. Mm-hmm. Because they weren't able to be a part of it. They didn't see anything about that change their situation, sure. change the situation for their families. They just saw someone getting richer. They just saw someone else benefiting. And they who had labored in their communities for years have stuck around, who stood the test of time, they don't get to benefit. So it's really important, I think, for that project and the work I do today, that we say that those who stayed should benefit. When mm-hmm. great things happen, you don't have to move. You don't have to leave Baltimore. You don't have to leave Montana. You don't have to leave Arkansas for great things to happen. You should be able to stay in your place mm-hmm. and good things happen to you. And I think that's like one of the cornerstones of what I think is important about economic development, to really think about like not a have and a have nots, but how can we all win where we were planted?
I love that. And I would like to explore more of that with your role at Johns Hopkins. But, one thing I want to say is that we see those tensions mm-hmm. every day throughout the country.
Yeah.
It's a tension that economic developers have to grapple with, because you always have that segment of the community who doesn't want things to change. And I think you're right. In part, some of that fear of change may come from, am I going to have any benefits from that change, or am I going to suffer the negatives of that change? Am I going to lose what makes my community special? Or the mm-hmm. housing price is going to go up in my neighborhood and my taxes because mm-hmm. other developments happening, things like that. And so that approach of being able to be successful in the midst of the growth for everybody, I think is really refreshing and unique. And we all want that, but it's something we don't all know how to achieve. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts about that, in your role with Johns Hopkins, because obviously as such a world-renowned university. It's also a place of high privilege, like you said. People see other people getting more successful. How does Johns Hopkins and other anchors make an impact in a way that brings everybody up, not just the people that you directly interact with?
Yeah, it takes thoughtfulness and direction and audacious and strict adherence to values and principles. We are the largest employer in the state of Maryland. Of course, that also makes us the largest employer in the city of Baltimore. We provide services to people all over the world. I was talking to a budget analyst on my team today, and she talked about her cousin coming from Iran to receive cancer treatment.
Oh, wow.
And we have to do those things in a spirit of excellence and at scale and with fidelity and all of that. But we also have to make sure that when we put out contracts for bid, when we spend our money, makes Baltimore better.
Okay.
When we procure products, that if at all possible, we procure them in Baltimore. That when we hire not from the most affluent neighborhoods, because we're going to get that, but we be targeted and thoughtful about hiring from places where an income of 60, 70, 80, 100,000 could change a whole family and a whole block.
Right.
And having fidelity to those principles is really important. We have a number of initiatives that we forecast here. So a great deal of my work is about place and about where's development happening, where are we a third party, where are we taking an interest in property, how are we bringing things online. But a lot of my work is also about where are we incentivizing growth. So for one of the amazing programs, I often don't talk about it, but I should talk about it more, is our Live Near Your Work grant, where we get $17,000 for people to live in neighborhoods across the city at all income levels in our community. And we really are dogmatic about really bringing to life neighborhoods that many others would not invest in, but we are putting our money behind our employees to live there. I think that another thing is our Hopkins Local Initiative, where we set goals, benchmarks, and also drive change in our hiring, our procurement, our design and construction, as well as our investments. Who do we invest with? What are they investing in, from a venture capital or from an endowment? And so in so many ways, we think about the added benefit of us being here, not just the fact that people get employed by Hopkins, not just that we heal people from all across the world, but are we also a part of the healing of Baltimore? Are we a part of the growth of Baltimore? And not just growth from our standpoint, but the growth of others. And I think that you have to think about the ecosystem that you're building. As you think about, when you are a large institution and you are making great strides, it is in your self-interest to focus on those who are in proximity to you, to make sure they're doing well, to make sure that they grow as you grow. And so we enjoy this work, but it's part of our business health. It's a part of our growth strategy to grow alongside the city that we reside in.
I think that's a really good point to make, because obviously having a successful community is good for you as you continue to grow and need to hire talent, for example. And it's something that regardless of the size of community you're in, you could be the biggest hospital in a community of 30,000. Right. And the need is still the same to be able to recruit that talent and really be part of a good supportive ecosystem. So I guess what words of encouragement or wisdom would you give to other major employers, again, regardless of the size of community they're in, about getting involved in the economic development of their own communities?
There are many things that you could be involved in as a large employer. Of course, as I've always heard, money and good energy always finds a home. It's always finding a home. You don't have to worry about it. But where are you going to get the return? Where's your highest return? Right? So think about where's your highest return. I know that you'll get certain return if you invest in certain types of vehicles. I promise you, if you invest in your community, that lives outside of your walls, your investment is in the most accelerated vehicle for growth that it could ever be in. Because as you talk about an institution doesn't survive on its own.
Right.
It survives because of what it is in proximity to, what it is able to cause, to create, to innovate, to bring, and to draw to itself. And people are drawn to things that are good, that are moving, that are growing. And so if you have your growth strategy, if it is not about proximity to people, places, and things that attract great things to you, then you don't have a growth strategy. You have limited yourself, I think, in many ways. And at some point, when the market catches up to you, which the market always catches up to you, you have not put your investment in a sustainable return.
Yeah, and it's definitely a struggle, especially in certain places in the country where there's been things like population decline, for example. And you have legacy employers who really are a great company, great place to work, invest in the community, but now they're having to figure out ways to get involved in economic development in order to work on workforce attraction, for example, just because they don't have enough talent locally. So it's definitely things that I think is on everyone's mind right now, is how to play more of an active role in that. You obviously mentioned a couple initiatives that John Hopkins has. Are there any other initiatives or success stories that you think might be good examples of, how a major employer like yourself is doing economic development work in the community?
So one thing that I would say is, I hope that you, when hearing me speak, understand that the strategies and things that I'm talking about are accessible for you from wherever you are in your journey, wherever you're sitting in. I pick on Montana because I love Montana. So maybe somebody will listen to this from Montana. But if you're in rural Montana or you're in Baltimore, right? Who do you purchase from? What's your thought process behind that? And are you thinking about them as being a part of your development? So I'll give you an example. We purchase bagels. Everybody likes a bagel. You like a bagel, Bethany?
Everyone likes bagels. Everything bagel.
Everybody likes bagels. Everybody likes bagels. So you think about bagels. So our university buys bagels every day.
Okay.
So we bought them from a woman-owned business called Bottoms Up Bagel. And we start out buying them in a small amount, then a much larger amount. Well, guess what? Bottoms Up Bagels make so many bagels that they opened up a storefront near us, right? So now there's a Bottom Up Bagel near us because our spend is so much that they want to be in proximity.
Nice.
I'll give you another example. Taharka Brothers ice cream. You ever had that, Bethany?
I have not had their ice cream. Is it really good?
Oh, you live too close. One day we're going to go get ice.
I like it. I love ice cream.
We're going to put it on there. Taharka Brothers Ice Cream started with a very small account with Hopkins. And they will tell you this. Sean, who owns Taharka Brothers, will tell you. Started with a very small purchase, which grew. And literally, you can look at Taharka Brothers' growth. And it is in direct relation to our spend and our continuing to purchase with them.
Nice.
Since we started working with Taharka Brothers, they started out small number of individuals. Taharka Brothers today is employee owned, 100% employee owned, employs young men and women from across our city of Baltimore, has kiosks, is in major grocery stores, and it's because we spent with a local vendor. Now, I had no problem with national brands. I love them. But if you're a national brand and you have a high revenue of purchase from a particular town or particular institution, and you're not going to move there, you as an institution deserve to use other vendor that is going to move in proximity to you and will help to grow up an ecosystem around you, which is what you were going to spend on anyway. Right. I'm talking about a no dollar. You're not adding any money to the bottom line. You're going to buy bagels if you're going to buy them from this place or that place. Buy them from a place that's going to move in proximity to you. And now you got a bagel shop where people who are in that community, they would take their kids to a bagel shop. Now you have an ice cream parlor.
Mm-hmm.
You want to tell me I can't raise a family near an ice cream parlor? You're going to tell I'm starting
kids love ice cream.
They love ice cream. You're starting to create in proximity to you that which you love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what is growing in your community. Every big business started out as a small business. Not one of them didn't. And so thinking about how, yes, you're going to need to buy at scale some things, but how can you also think about creating an ecosystem around you? And then think about, so me as a large employer, you know, I buy land I have land that I probably am sitting on. Mm-hmm. Could I redevelop that and think about, well, there's some uses above, but could I put retail in there? And could I think about offering that retail to who companies I want to work with? So I think there's a lot of opportunities that don't count yourself out of being wildly creative in how you approach this.
Well, one thing that's interesting too, you talk about, you know, basically giving the small business enough of that baseline contract where they then can hire a certain number of people that allows them to go out and grow. And I think it's that stability of that contract that can make a big difference. And one of the things that we talk about a lot with workforce attraction, for example, is how, you know, if you bring in people to work for one business, they may have a spouse or they may have a teenage child that can then, you know, work part-time at the grocery store, what have you. So by creating jobs in those small businesses, you're also potentially increasing the talent opportunities you have for your own business. So it's that ecosystem that you're talking about where everything works together.
Yeah, and if you're a larger business, like you're the anchor institution, that family's thinking about, I tell you, on every trip for recruiting, people bring along their spouses, they bring along their children. Like, do they see themselves here? Like, they're part of the ride. We think about the one person we're recruiting, but they're part of a family unit. And they're thinking about every part of their lives. And I've seen us lose or win people based on the fact that their children are going to get to work down the street. The wife or the husband is going to be able to work in an adjacent employer.
Sure.
So I think thinking about people as parts of family units is also a helpful part of economic development. I think we've seen a little bit of that shift since COVID. I think we do think of people more as a part of family units because we got to see into their houses for, I guess, 2 years.
You mean people have lives outside of the office?
I know, kids and pets and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I think we're a little bit more attuned to that, but I hope we don't lose that.
Sure.
But that's a strategic advantage if you can think about economic development for people as a part of a community.
Right. Absolutely. Either the existing community and how something impacts them or whoever you're trying to recruit. That's absolutely a good point. So I didn't give you a heads up. I was going to ask you anything about this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Housing is a huge topic, workforce housing across the country right now. What is, I guess, Hopkins's role in addressing workforce housing in Baltimore, if anything?
Sure. So a couple of things. One, you know, I mentioned early on in the interview, our Live Near Your Work program, which is to really utilize and help employees cobble together a whole myriad of free money that they can apply to them becoming homeowners. So we give a Live Near Your Work grant as an employer, but they could also apply for a city grant, which is another $5,000. There's other incentives. And so we think really thoughtfully about how do we spur purchasing home ownership in certain communities.
Sure.
We also are supportive of initiatives like one's called the East Baltimore Development Initiative, where we help to try to bring to fruition housing and development that's affordable for, you know, the single man or woman who is working within Hopkins, so they can work over the course of their career, you know, maybe start renting, start moving into a home ownership. We also have a significant competitive advantage in Baltimore. And although we are sort of buttressed by Philly to our north and DC to our south, it's quite affordable to live in Baltimore. And so we use that as a competitive advantage to really say, it's really great to live here. So if you live here, work at Hopkins, your spouse could live in DC, and you're bringing two incomes here that really make for you to live extremely well in this city. And I think some other places across the country have that advantage too, right?
Right.
You're talking about, would I want to move to Arkansas? I think it's a great place. And Bentonville is it's beautiful too. But if you are going to move to Arkansas, you can have a spouse that works from home, because now we have work from home. They can live in Bentonville, work for Walmart, work for the University of Arkansas, and ultimately have an income that allows them to live really well. So there are certain places in the country. And so we, as an employer, think our Live Near Your Work program really helps. Our investment with other developers and bringing to fruition affordable housing is really important, but also even just helping our employees think about, like, where do you want to live in proximity to our campuses and to our health centers.
That's great. It's such an important topic. So this is a job that creates an opportunity for you to have an outsized impact on your community, to really leave a legacy mark on your community. So what impact do you hope to make?
I hope I don't waste the opportunity that I have. So that's the biggest thing. So I'm always very focused on every table that I'm fortunate enough to sit at. I've realized it's not my time to just sit at the table and take in the world. It's my time to use my voice at those tables to push an agenda. And that is to the benefit of the entire community. I have an abundance mindset. I feel like there's enough for everyone. I feel like there are limits that people impose and structures that impose, but everything is limitless. And so as I think about the resources that I have at my disposal, and I think about the strategy and the ability to cause things to come to fruition, I'm going to use it for people who never get to come to that microphone. They don't get to sit at that table. And I try to bring them into my work in a really thoughtful manner. I know people will probably say, if you ever been at a table with Alicia, there's a couple of things that I'm probably going to say. If I come up with a bright idea, I'm always going to say, can somebody push back against me? So I always want a contrarian idea to push me to see if that's the best idea. And I welcome that. The other will be, is that big enough? So I'm a person that says, is that big enough? Are we doing, is that enough? Like, let's go one more mile and say, is that big enough? And the third will be, there's some folks who aren't in this room who we are making decisions for. How, if they got to sit in this seat, would they make the same decision? If they were in this room hearing what we were doing, would they be pleased, or would they know that they were left out? It's okay to ask that. And I think it's proper to ask it. It's important to ask it. But I think it is even more important to wait around for the answer and to be steadfast to say that we will shift if the answer is not what we want it to be. And so I think my legacy, and I hope my legacy, is that I didn't waste any of those moments, and that I always remembered to bring people in that never would even get to knock on the door, and bring them in an honorable way, recognizing that they too deserve for good things to happen for them and for their families and for their community.
I love that. And I hope that your legacy is absolutely that, because those are incredible goals. And honestly, it'll leave the community in such a better place.
Yeah.
I think that last question that you asked is really an inspiring one, especially being willing to wait for the answer and adjust, as you mentioned, because something that we all deal with as leaders is it's our job to put out plans and to think about plans that are going to be the best for our entire community, but we're not infallible. We don't know everything, even though we try. And sometimes we do make mistakes. And so I think being willing to have that feedback and being vulnerable enough to listen to that feedback. Is really important.
I think, and I've observed this, if a leader won't shift based on new information, based on like heart, I don't want to follow. I mean, I know you don't. I've come to the point where all money's not good money. I don't have to do.
Right.
I mean, I need to work. Let me not say that. I have to work. I'm going to private work for a
HR, she needs to work. Let's make it work.
I need to work. But I don't need to earn money any kind of way.
Sure.
I can be selective and principle driven. And that's how I've been my whole life. But I'm really eyes wide open on that now. And if you don't feel like you're adding value to, if you've ever been in the position where you have not been in the room and you hoped and prayed that somebody in there was fighting for you, and you hold on to that when you get in the room and you get to the table, that's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Yeah, don't forget where you came from, right? Your own background.
Don't forget where you came from and realize you can go right back there. You may go right back there. You can go. It's not that hard. Not that fast. It's a fast trip back.
It is. So you gotta be careful. Well, speaking of the past, we have this game that we play, the shovel toss game, where we're going to ask you rapid fire random questions, some of which will require you to think back a ways. Okay? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
We're going to see if we can get through these fast.
Okay.
All right. Your favorite song in high school?
Girls Rule the World.
Nice. Your best vacation memory?
Oh, Laguna Beach.
Beautiful. Favorite ice cream flavor, preferably from your local vendor?
Vanilla.
Okay. Vanilla. Person who inspires you?
I'll do the two. My parents.
Hi, Mom and Dad.
And Mom and Dad.
Ideal superhero power?
Invincibility.
Book you're reading right now?
I'm going to read this book. It's in my next one, which is called Lead Like Jesus.
All right. Number one on your bucket list?
This is a good one. Go to Israel.
Nice. Childhood nickname?
Oh, Leash.
All right. And something you would tell your younger self?
Every part of the journey that you're on will be for use at a later point. The highs and the lows, the pains and the great triumphs. Nothing will be wasted. So look up and look around and learn and live and love as much as you can, because it's for a greater purpose that you're going through it.
That's some good advice. That's good advice to everyone's younger self.
Everyone.
Not just yours. Oh, you've been great today, Alicia. I thank you so much for your time. It's been a wonderful podcast, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you around since we're so close to each other.
I know. We need to bump into one another, or we'll make that happen.
Probably over ice cream.
That's right, vanilla.
Yeah, I'm going to get a little more interesting flavor.
Okay, honey graham. I should have said honey graham.
Oh, honey graham. I've never even heard of that flavor.
Change your life.
Thank you so much to Alicia Wilson for that lively and enthusiastic discussion. Make sure you go check her out on LinkedIn and connect with her. There's a lot of great content on her LinkedIn page, and you can really tell that enthusiasm that she displayed on that podcast translates throughout her impressive career. Make sure to check that out. As far as Golden Shovel content, I touched a little bit on our latest housing ebook and webinar. So please, again, check that out. We are super proud of that. As far as Golden Shovel news, there may be some new hires in the works that maybe we can announce soon. So stay tuned for that. Social media, Facebook, like us at ShovelToss. Twitter, follow us at Gold Shovel. LinkedIn, follow us at Golden Shovel, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Golden Shovel Agency. We will be back very soon with a new podcast. I believe maybe Amanda will be back and might have another entry into her remote worker series as she kind of communicates her life on the road on being a digital nomad. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you for everyone for listening, and we will see you next month on Shovel Talk.